What I 100% believe to be true is we all have had these experiences in our life, maybe not consciously, but literally any symptom that we experience in our body is a message in some way. As simple as, our body tells us when we're hungry, our body tells us when we're tired, our body tells us all sorts of things during our day. And our body also tells us things from skin rashes, tells us things from earaches, trouble with our eyes, sore throat. There's messages in all of these things. That's really all it is. Any symptom is simply just information and a message.
Welcome to Journeys Through Change, a podcast that inspires women to let go of the fear and say yes to possibility. I'm your host, Noelle Van, an author, creator, and empowerment coach who spent years in corporate America helping innovators and leaders ride the waves of change with ease and grace. I now work with women to step into change and unleash the power they have to create a life they love. Whether you're contemplating a change in your career, relationship, health, lifestyle, or anything in between, nothing's off the table. I'll be offering up simple insights to help you manage the ups and downs of change and sharing interviews with successful women who took a leap of faith to create the life they knew they were meant to live, sharing their wisdom, advice, and all the juicy lessons they learned along the way. So get cozy in your favorite comfy chair and let's get started. Sometimes it takes us several detours to set us on a path we know we were meant to travel, and listening to our bodies is part of the journey. It's not always easy, but so critical when it comes to recognizing what feels right to us or what may feel off-center when looking for what brings us joy and fulfillment. Sarah Tamaya is a former career accountant who has taken several paths to find what feels true in her life. Over the past 15 years, she has helped individuals take radical responsibility for their own lives through coaching, yoga instruction, plant medicine, and QHHT Hypnosis, showing them the way back to themselves through love, awareness, and recognition of the power of their bodies. Sarah, I'm so excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
So Sarah, to get us started, I want to kind of put it out there to you just to let us know or start really where you want to start on your journey, because I know there's been lots of different paths that you've taken. So maybe just get us started with where you feel comfortable beginning.
Well, I would describe my journey as really kind of starting out in high school, honestly, when I look back and kind of track where kind of those moments where the fork in the road were. So I really take that into high school. And within high school, I made a few decisions, and some of those decisions were to have a long-term high school boyfriend that I ended up marrying, closer to 30 years old, but dating my high school boyfriend for a very long time. And the other choice that really had a deep impact on me was to follow in the footsteps of my mother, who was a bookkeeper, and she did the books for my family's business. And so in high school, I made this decision not knowing what I wanted to do with my life, but I was good at math. So I kind of started into the trajectory of business and finances and accounting, similar to my mom. And so that was a really important acknowledgement in looking back, where I really kind of set myself onto a trajectory that it wasn't until probably my mid-20s that I really started to feel the constriction of those choices.
What kind of brought you to that, where you started to feel the constriction? Like, what was it that changed for you?
I had a really pleasant life experience. I had bought a house with my long-term boyfriend. We were planning on renovating the house. I had a really good job that I enjoyed, working in finance. My life wasn't too bad. The first thing that happened was I had an appointment for a massage, and my massage therapist canceled the appointment, which to me was devastating because I loved massages. But what happened was, because I didn't want to not have the massage, I chose to go to a different therapist that was at the clinic. And this different therapist ended up being one of the biggest human catalysts in my life, simply by being in my life. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was a guy, and I had never been to a massage with a guy before. I always had female therapists. But I ended up continuing to see him, partly because I felt bad that if I didn't go back to see him, he might think I didn't like the massage or something. But funny enough, as the weeks passed, as the months and the years, we became really good friends. And he started, not even intentionally, but just the person that he started introducing me to different things, which kind of started stretching my perception in myself. So I started taking different actions and making different choices and starting to question my path at that time by opening to yoga was a big one for me. That was one of the biggest ones initially, but it was this connection with this person that really just kind of stretched my perception in so many ways.
That's such a serendipitous thing to happen too, isn't it? Kind of one of those like, well, had I not, had my massage therapist not canceled, I might not have even met him. But now when you say yoga, because I'm always so curious about this because I think we all find our way to yoga in different ways, those of us that practice it. Was it just something that you wanted to try out? Was it something that he suggested that you do? Like, how did you get involved in that? Because I know you're an instructor too, correct?
He was going through a teacher training at the time, but I wasn't interested at all. It was actually a different friend who said, hey, I have this free pass. You want to go to this class? And the class happened to be at the same studio that my friend also went to. And I just went because she had a free pass. I had no inkling of anything at that time. It was not something that was catalyzing or landing at that time.
Wow. Okay. So so this is in your.
I was about 25. It was like in my mid
Okay.
20s that things really started shifting for me. And I consider myself to be at that time not super athletic, but maybe like 10 to 15 pounds overweight, but a general like happy person and strong person at the time. And it wasn't the fitness aspect or the flexibility that drew me. And it was really the spirituality. That's what snapped that first time, just hearing the instructor. Sometimes they tell stories or reflect on yogic philosophies and that sort of thing. But as soon as they started speaking, I just was like, my spirit was hearing and listening.
Oh, I love that. And then did you go into teacher training soon thereafter?
I did. And that was when, again, through this friend, I sort of went through the same training that he did. And then that was, again, the catalyst that then brought me to plant medicines, which was my next kind of opening. By that time, I was married in my relationship. I had saved my money for, basically 10 years to be able to renovate. And I was designing like this beautiful renovation. And then I found plant medicines through yoga in Peru. And that was the next volcano. The yogic one was just like a little bit of a nudge in a direction of like, hey, there's more to you than you realize. And that was more so the gradual awakening that was happening in me before the plant medicines came along.
So plant medicines, tell us more about that.
Well, at the time, I knew nothing about them. They were, again, not on my radar. It was part of a retreat that I was invited to in Peru. And I learned when I was down there that it can be a really transformational experience. And this particular plant medicine was called ayahuasca. And they can be very transformational in terms of they're basically showing you aspects of you through a visionary experience. And I had a pretty significant one in the second ceremony that I had down there in the retreat. And basically, it told me I had a choice. I had another fork in the road. And it was one that I knew deeply inside me as I was starting to open up spiritually within the yoga practice, but that I wasn't sure if I should be married. I was questioning many things in my life. And it was that particular plant medicine that showed me a vision of how difficult my life would be if I didn't make a significant change. Example, pretty much leave everything that I knew at that time. It was a pretty big one.
That's pretty profound. I would imagine that would be a session that you would not take lightly.
No, I wish I would have forgotten it at the time, but
well, and it just kind of makes me think of those kinds of things that are in the back of your mind that are brought to the forefront that you go, oh, shoot, like I got to look at that. I've got to look at that.
absolutely. And when they're acknowledged, and it can happen in so many different ways, when we acknowledge these aspects that are hiding, there can be these moments where we're like, oh, I really know it now. And because I know
Yes.
it to a deeper level, it's almost a necessity that I have to make a choice on this right now. It's like a choice point.
Yeah, you like can't really unring the bell.
No, you can't.
You know?
I like that analogy. The bell has rung. You can't ring
Yes.
it. Yeah.
This happens, and kind of where did you go from there? What was your path?
Well, it was really interesting. Essentially, I didn't know. I tried to unsee it basically for some time, but this is one of the first times I had a conscious awareness of my body and a message that it was giving me because when I returned from that trip, I thought, my life is pretty good right now. So maybe I can kind of massage my life in a way that I can still make things work. And maybe I don't have to be as extreme as I felt that message was sending me. Maybe I could just kind of be really open and honest and stay in the relationship. But I started to get physically ill at that time. And it didn't take very long. It was about a month until I returned from that trip. And I had told my husband at the time what had happened. And he was a little obviously uneasy about things. But I said, I think we can make this work. And, I think if we talk about this, things can get better from here. But my body was saying no. I had really severe stomach problems. Yeah, just feeling like I was going to throw up a lot, just not from like having a cold or a flu, even though that's a whole other message. But I was very clear that I was receiving a message in my body. I was like sick to my stomach over it. I was scared.
Isn't it crazy too how the body signals things? And the more that you recognize how that shows up in your body, then it's easier to recognize it later. Like, I feel like I'm more aware of that in my own body than I ever have been before, where it's like, it's telling me something. That was a pretty big message. That's a life altering message to be
Absolutely.
hearing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And so I just had to do it at that time. I had to just be honest and I had to just completely live that life. And I guess maybe interesting enough, the symptoms went away, but my life
Right.
drastically changed. And at that time, I had just started this new job. Again, a really great job with great benefits. Again, I was kind of living the trajectory of high school boyfriend, get married, go to college or university and get a degree and a good job and that sort of thing. And it was starting to crumble. It was starting to crumble for me. And so I left that marriage. I left this house that we had just finished renovating and that was my dream. And at that time also, I stayed at my job for a very short period of time and trying to figure things out, but it was working in a cubicle. It was very challenging for me. And it wasn't long after that I decided to leave that job as well. And so what I decided to do is I was ready to quit, but because I had such great benefits, they encouraged me to take a leave so I could have some space to kind of work my stuff out. And then if I needed to come back, I could. That was a great thing at the time, even though I was saying, I'm not coming back. I'm very clear this is not for
Right.
me, but that's what had happened at that time.
So how much time did you have? That's quite a gift.
It was quite a gift. And I'm from Canada. And so I know that this was a big gift, but it was 15 months.
Like a sabbatical?
Yeah.
And this was in accounting. This was an
Yeah.
accounting job?
Yeah.
That's a good slug of time to
Right?
be able to figure out yes,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. But in many ways, I
Wow.
was a complete disaster. I
In
didn't
what
figure a
way?
lot out during that time.
Well, you know what? It takes time, right? It does take time.
I had left most of my friends again. Like I really had nowhere to go, and I didn't have a plan B skill, so to speak, that I could fall back on. And I was starting to see also the pattern of following my mom's archetype with her line of work, etc. And so I thought, I'd been teaching yoga for a bit, but I wasn't sure. I didn't have a foundation. I didn't really have a support system to help guide me on that. And so the short of that story is I kind of floated around for some time and I ended up going back to the job because I needed the money. And so I ended up buying a house and kind of starting a little, like definitely a different life than I led before, but I went back to the job.
Jobs are, especially the corporate world, is a big draw. That sense of safety. I've experienced that myself, where I left and kind of came back until I finally left. So I get what you mean. Okay, so you're back at the job, but you have a new house.
Yeah, same city, same city. And so I worked the job. Then I was teaching yoga. Hula hooping came into my life. I was this like
Hula
phenomenon in my
hooping.
city about hula hooping. I was like 32 years old. I was teaching hula hooping and loved it
Oh my
kind of
God, I love
randomly,
it.
but things just started to happen that were really different. some really different things. And I was still traveling to Peru a lot, working with plant medicines. And so I felt like I was more of myself, but I was still working at this job that was always a constant struggle for me. And I ended up staying there since my first day. I ended up staying there for 11 years at this job. And again, remembering that first day was the first day back from my first trip to Peru. It was right at the beginning of my journey. And I stayed there for 11 years trying to navigate both kind of worlds, so to speak. And I always knew that I didn't want to work there, but now I had a family and I'm supporting my family, right? But that was the thread, was this job, this, since high school, right? Deciding to do this. And it wasn't until I left that job. And at that time, I wanted to get more into coaching because I did do a lot of that in my work. And it was something that I worked with a coach. And she said, at that time, I had opened this little like natural soap making company and I was making soap and loving that.
Fun.
And
That's so fun.
yeah, it was really wonderful. And she said to me, yeah, Sarah, but what do you really want to do? And she said it and then she stopped. I felt like she saw me. I felt like she knew. And it was this moment where I had to tell her that I hated my job. And this coaching that I was receiving was funded from my job as well. So I just was like, I hate my job. I don't want to be here. But saying that to her was another one of those bell ringing moments that you described. I said it out loud to somebody, not my friend, just kind of messing around or having a coffee, but I said it to someone else. And it really felt like it mattered when I said it. And when I said it to her, I knew that my time was like up. It was running out. And I describe it as almost, it's like my legs were shoulder width apart when I first left my job. And there was this little black hole underneath me. And the hole was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And my legs were like having to get wider and wider.
Ooh,
and
that's a really strong visual.
It was unknown in there and I didn't want to go in there, but it was inevitable. It would stretch and stretch and stretch. And by the end, I described myself as I was actually in the hole upside down and I had nailed a couple nails on the side that my laces were still attached to, but I was like, that's how tight I was holding on and not wanting to let go. And I just had to let my feet slip out of those shoes.
Oh, I love that. Seriously.
It was so
That
intense.
is a great visual. Yes. And it does describe, I mean, for any of us that have been in that place, and there's many different scenarios there where people are in the place where you kind of are like, okay, I got to do it. I got to do it. And it's delay, delay, delay until, wow. Okay. So did you quit at that point?
Well, I had many leaves available to me. I took a leave again. So to be honest, my boss knew my time was up, but I took a leave because I had to figure out, I had more sense by that time where I could leave with sense and a foundation and an actual plan versus just flailing through the air. And so I did take a leave and leave it when I did quit. It was so rare for someone to quit from where I worked. They almost didn't even know what to do because there were so many benefits. They were like, are you sure? Because you can almost literally take a leave indefinitely.
No, is this a paid leave? Are they paying you during this time? Okay.
No.
I was going to say that would be the gift, but okay.
Wouldn't it though?
Yeah, it would. But time is good too. Time is good too.
It is. And so I was able to kind of make a plan, but I did leave the job. And that was one of the most difficult things that I've done in myself. I left, my marriage, I left this home, I left friends, I left, temporarily, I left the city that I lived in. But this job, for whatever reason, was the most difficult thing for me to leave. And I think the finances had a lot to do with that. But when I did, and then I started on this new journey that I'm on now, something that I started to become more aware of. And I worked with many different healing modalities, just kind of experimenting or also just seeking my own healing. So I'd worked in many different healings, but I was very aware of my legs and how tight my legs had been, how I would describe them as tight my entire life, whereby even though I taught yoga, my legs were very inflexible. Folding forward, took a lot. My hips were also very tight. And it wasn't until probably about a year and a half after I left that job, I realized my attention was brought back to my legs. Even though I would massage them regularly, they would never let up. Extra stretching, nothing would help. And I just I looked up to the sky one day. I was on my way to a massage and I said, I'm just like done with this whole leg thing. Like I'm done with it. I'd been in pain like for most of my life with my legs, but it was not so much that I was debilitated, but it was always tight. There was something that was always holding it back. And I just was over it. I was done with it. And I just looked up and I just said, you know what, like, let me release something in this massage because I'm finished with this feeling. And it was just a moment. It was, again, another fork, or just like the stars opened up for me, whereby I received specifically that. And it wasn't from stretching, it wasn't from anything. It was from me asking and me understanding why I had experienced that tightness in my legs my whole life. And it just, poof, it just vanished. It was gone within 2 weeks.
What was the understanding that you came to about that?
The understanding, and I knew this conceptually, but the understanding was that I was scared to move forward in my life. As much as I had all of these other changes that I was navigating and journeying through, I was terrified of leaving the one thing that I needed to leave, which was that job. And that job was holding me back to opening to what I really needed and wanted to do, what I was meant to work with, and all of these things. But I was so terrified of moving forward and that black hole of the unknown. Yeah. And again, I had lots of experience in the unknown, a ton of experience. But with the job, that was the one. And if I think back, I don't really remember if when I was a child I had tight legs. I may have, but I really attest it to, because I was very physically athletic in high school. I worked out a lot, but I don't recall this like aching in the legs that I remember all through my 20s, all through my 30s, and times even like having a hard time getting out of bed, my back hurting, my hips aching, this like aching feeling. But that understanding was I had a huge fear of moving forward, and I had to get out of that job to step more into myself. And as soon as I did that and I asked and I was ready to receive that, and I was taking actual action to move forward, it was like, she's ready. She's ready to understand that she was holding herself back that whole time, because now she's moving forward.
And that's the first time that I've really heard that description of something, that physical manifestation in your body of being held back. And then it releasing once you've actually made some life choice like you did, which took, like you said, it took a long time to get you there.
Well, I'm 48 now, so it took me close to probably 13. Well, it took me really until that trajectory changed to really kind of understand that. But it took a lot of physical pain too. Like, again, looking back, I'm like, yeah, like there were actual times that I couldn't get out of bed and I just was like, like I was just thinking, about the pain. I wasn't thinking, what is my body actually trying to tell me? Because that's what was actually happening. My body was giving me messages, making it worse. It was making it a little bit worse. It was making it a little bit worse.
Yes.
For me to get this message until I got it. Thank goodness.
This is so telling to me too, because I feel like, we all think that we go through these changes in life or come to these realizations about where we're going in life overnight. Like, oh, well, I'm going to figure out what my life purpose is. I mean, I'm being very general, but I'm going to figure out what my life purpose is and I'm just going to do it. It takes time. It takes messages, and it takes the fact that you were listening to your body and your mind. And like you said, when you're talking about it in years, it's like, it just takes what it takes, right? It takes the time that it's going to take. And I think that we often lose sight of that when we think, oh my gosh, well, I need to just make these swooping changes. It's like sometimes it just comes in shifts and you get closer and closer and closer to where you want to be. And it sounds like once you were able to finally release that, then like physically your body was feeling the relief too, which is amazing to me.
Well, absolutely. And I believe this to be true now. And just that one thing happening with me and opening me to my work now, which is in hypnosis, which was never on my radar. But what I 100% believe to be true is we all have had these experiences in our life, maybe not consciously that we've been aware, but what I've learned is literally any symptom that we experience in our body is a message in some way. As simple as, our body tells us when we're hungry, our body tells us when we're tired, our body tells us all sorts of things during our day. And our body also tells us things from skin rashes, tells us things from earaches, trouble with our eyes, sore throat. There's messages in all of these things. And since learning that and having my legs awakened in that way, to see that, it's allowed me to cut that time from receiving a message because my body will have a symptom. And nowadays, if my body has a symptom, immediately I look to find out what that message is and what change needs to happen or what shift needs to happen or what message do I need to know about what's going on in my life so I can shift that and shorten that time significantly, because that's really all it is. Any symptom is simply just information and a message.
Right. Well, and I want to talk a little bit with you about the hypnosis because I think that's super interesting. But before we get to that, when you talk about if you have something that you're feeling in your body, how do you reach that? How do you find out what that's coming from? Do you ask yourself certain questions? Do you meditate? What is it that you do to get there?
Well, I personally ask myself some questions, but again, it can happen in many different ways. And some people, different modalities, people can have similar experiences. But in myself, I've learned to ask myself certain questions. And part of that is tapping into maybe it's the thoughts or the words in our mind that come through and listening to those, because a lot of people actually discount and they don't trust messages that come through in their mind as to answers to questions, etc. We can discount that as like, oh, that's not real, or that's not the real thing. To find a real message, I need to see a medium, or I need to get that validated outside of me. But very often, the first thing that comes to mind when we ask ourselves questions is a huge clue. Different areas of the body can commonly correspond to different things. So in my awareness of now, the different messages that can come from different areas or systems in the body, again, if there's anything to do with my legs or hips, I'm immediately thinking, what am I holding myself back from moving forward into? Is there anything? And so I'll simply just take a moment of silence and take a couple of deep breaths even, and just kind of ask myself, is what are my legs? I'll even talk to my legs, like, what are you trying to tell me? What's the message that
Wow.
you're trying to tell me? And the first thing that comes up, I'll just receive that. And then I might ask another question. So it might say you're just tired. And then I might ask the question, well, what am I tired of? Right. And I
That's a
kind
good
of
one.
go down the series of questioning, which can reveal, maybe it would have revealed, I'm tired of my job. I'm tired of working this job, if I would have done that back then. But even something like, I've had clients that have had not necessarily a bladder infection, but having to go to the bathroom many times, just kind of out of the blue. And, walk them through just to ask these questions. And it came very clearly that they were being very impatient with the situation in their life. And, even the analogies and the words we use, like when we have to go to the bathroom, I gotta go, I gotta go, I gotta go, it's
Right.
I gotta go. It's happening right now. So a frequency of that for this particular person was an impatience in wanting a result from a situation that they were happening. And literally in realizing that they could just tell themselves no, everything's okay. It's going to come when it comes. The results are going to come when they come in, and I'm safe. Everything's fine. Just that small realization is telling that to their body, right? Our bodies are listening to that. And it stopped. And this really can be done for anything.
When you do this, the hypnosis is what I'm so interested in because I know there's a lot of different types of hypnosis. But what is HHT hypnosis? Is that something that you do with your clients as well?
It is. It's called QHHT, Quantum Hypnosis Healing Technique.
Okay.
Quantum Hypnosis Healing Technique. And it was created by a woman named Dolores Cannon. And it's a specific method of hypnosis that brings clients deep into a theta state, into the deepest layers, where essentially they're accessing any and all information to heal their bodies of physical symptoms, to receive information about why things are happening in their life, what's their purpose. Essentially, it opens up like a funnel when we're in that state. Basically, all information about us, like Akashic records, past lives, parallel lives, why we're here, all sorts of things, soul contract, karma type things. Basically, whatever clients are seeking or whatever information they need, I describe it as tuning our frequency. So tuning our own radio dial to our clearest channel. And when we do that, and we all do many times throughout our day, especially when we're sleeping, we all do. When we're sleeping, we're in that clear channel. When we're dreaming, we do that very intentionally, where we tune that dial to people's specific frequency where they can ask the questions, just like we do about the body. But the brain wave is very specifically changing in that particular method into that deep theta brainwave state.
When did you start doing this kind of hypnosis?
Close to 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. Okay. And was this through yoga?
No, it was immediately after I received the leg release gift. I'd never been interested in hypnosis, but I'd never even heard of this method or Dolores Cannon, who's been around for decades and decades. I'd never heard of her, but this message just whoop came right and slapped me in front of my face that I needed to look up this Dolores Cannon. I can't even tell you how I made it to the website.
Wow.
It just happened, and it went like snap of the fingers.
Is it a certification that you get in like leading the I mean, I'm just trying to think of like how you, when you think of hypnosis as like putting somebody under, but is it more just like what is it within kind of a coaching atmosphere? What is it?
It's really a simple process, actually. It brings people into that same state, just like they're having a nap. And I basically tell a story in an induction, a very specific induction that people just follow along to. And it just brings you to that point where you're having a nap, but right before you fall into that deep sleep, you move through the alpha state into the theta state. And when we bring you into that theta and hold you there to experience what you experience in your session.
If I was doing this with you, I'd be lying down. I'm assuming it's kind of like I think of like Reiki, when you have somebody's there with you in a lot of things, massage, etc. But would you then be asking me questions and I'm aware of my answers, correct? Like am I in a hypnotic state? Is that the right way to say it?
That can vary. Some clients can be very aware, and other clients, their conscious mind is actually sleeping. They don't remember, but there's that part of them that's aware. They're never, like, it's not something else coming in. They're always in control because it's their body. It's like a dream where some people remember their dreams, some people don't. And some people are somewhere in between where they remember little bits and pieces. It's that same feeling.
But to get to the place where you're able to extract this or to invite the person to look inward, is there anything you do other than the story? You kind of bring them into a particular place and then start asking the questions.
I'm just telling the story. It's actually the people themselves. All hypnosis is actually self-hypnosis. There's no one that's hypnotizing you. Your body is responding and moving into a state of hypnosis, just like we're in a trance when we're listening to this podcast. We're in a trance when we're watching a show or a movie or driving, staring out the window, daydreaming. Our brains move into a trance. So it's actually simply the person's body is relaxing to the place that their brainwave reaches this theta state. And because I'm guiding the client by asking questions, they don't go into a deep sleep where they're sleeping. We're having an exchange, right? It's like being in a dream, but having someone there with you so you can remember it after.
Wow. Okay. You got interested in this, obviously, from your own experience. Have you been working with clients for a long time with this, or has it just been a couple of years?
Yeah.
Wow. And does it feel like this is your path?
Right now it is. Again, I can never predict my future, but right now, absolutely. It's every client that I get to work with, it purely lights me up. Everything about it.
Do you do this online as well as in person?
The hypnosis, the QHHT specific hypnosis technique, has to be done
Mhm.
in person. And
Okay.
so what I do online is called Soul Speak. And what Soul Speak is it's very similar, but we're simply working with the physical symptoms. We're not necessarily working with spiritual questions or karmic questions. It's more so learning and teaching people how to decode those messages in their own body. So we talk
Wow.
specifically about the physical symptoms, and then I hear that story, and then I can ask questions, or ask guided questions. So essentially, the person is coming to their own realization of why they're experiencing those symptoms, and that they
Right.
can then release those symptoms.
So if somebody were interested in looking into this more, is it basically her work? It's Dolores, right? Dolores Cannon. It's her work in terms of the hypnosis part of it?
Yeah. It's her work
Okay.
in terms of the hypnosis part of it. And if any of your listeners are curious about that type of hypnosis, they can go on the QHHT website, which is QHHTofficial.com, and you can look
Okay.
up a practitioner in your area. And they have a really great directory where you can look up practitioners in your area and feel into who might feel best for you wherever you're at and go from there. And the soul speak is actually something that came from Dolores Cannon's daughter, Julia Cannon. And it's something that came to her through her work with hypnosis. The teaching that I do from that is from her daughter, Julia.
Nice. You are loving the path that you're on now. I'm assuming it's not accounting.
No, it's not.
it's far, it's far, far from accounting. So what's coming up for you next? Is there anything that you want to share that, I mean, we'll be sharing your links in the show notes so that people can find you, find out what you're doing. But is there anything that's coming up for you, for your clients that you're excited about, or even just, in general, anything that's kind of coming up in 2024 for you?
Yeah, well, in 2024, I want to keep educating people on this same message that our bodies are messengers and that we all have the power to heal ourselves. And the most normal, optimal state of the human body is symptom free. And so any symptom, it's not good or bad, it's just a message that's trying to get to you. And that's the way that it's coming from that same place of tuning the dial. So I want to keep getting that message out to people that any symptom is just like someone tapping you on your shoulder, saying like, there's a
Pay
message for
attention.
you, and it comes
Yeah,
through the body, because we can't ignore those, right? We can
right.
ignore something else, but if we're carrying something in our body, it's there always. And the other thing is helping people shorten that time span when they're navigating change in whatever way, shape, or form. Shortening that time span of realizing that change needs to happen, and to
Mhm.
be able to let that interference kind of drift away and move with that clear channel forward. So a little bit more into the coaching and helping people with the action steps. So that
Love that.
integration piece of taking action when friends and family don't necessarily understand what's going on, and maybe we don't even understand what's going on, but like to do that with the most ease and grace that we can.
Sarah, that's so wonderful. I really, the way that you speak about this, you can tell that it's your passion, but also I think what's really helpful to people, kind of like what we said, you can go through life looking for what's next, right? And looking for kind of what your path is, but to have somebody help guide you to really listen intuitively to your body and your mind is a really powerful thing. I mean, it just is. I'm sure you have helped a lot of people get to a place that they need to be faster, maybe than if they were trying to do it on their own.
For sure, nothing happens that we're not ready for, right? In as
Yes.
painful and as great as many of these things can be, but what I know to be true, at least through my story, is that we can never know what's around the corner. So I
Yeah.
always encourage people that, it's okay and they're okay, and to just keep moving forward, just that one step in front of the other, even if it feels like we're stepping backwards a bunch of steps or sliding down the hill. We're always moving forward as long as we're continuing to seek, right? And we can
Yes.
never, never, never know what is around the corner, no matter what our age.
I love that. That's actually so, so, so true. Sarah, thank you so much for being with us. This has been such
Thank
a
you.
pleasure to talk to you. And I want to keep in touch because I love your work. I love what you're doing. We're going to have all your links in the show notes too. So if people want to check you out, check out what you do, you're in Puerto Vallarta, correct? So
Correct.
if anybody wants to go get some work, not work done. What am I saying? It's not really work done. But if they want to come meet Sarah, it's a great place. It's a great place to meet you. Sarah, thank you. I really do appreciate it. And we're going to keep in touch,
Thank
see how
you
things
so
are
much.
going. All right. Well, that's it for now. Until next time. Thanks for listening to the Journeys Through Change podcast. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or really wherever you get your podcasts. And be sure to follow us and leave a review if you've enjoyed this episode. And share it with a friend or on social media to spread the good word, so more women like you can find us and join in on the fun. For more information on the podcast or Day by Day book, go to livedaybyday.com.